At it again, the state of football, 117. We're throwing coal in the engine here. We're getting off the tracks. We're departing the station, the state of football, part 117. Here, January 12th, 2021, RSC, in a place to be, broadcasting around the universe here from the Jersey Shore. Ha! Man, woo! Are you with me? Oh, yeah. We've got a jam-packed show with you. Quite frankly, why you're asking, why is Rick in such a good mood today? Because there's really nobody better. I enjoy chopping it up, talking football, talking NFL draft. When it comes to my panel today, of course, we have my co-host each and every day down in New Orleans, John Murphy, the VP of Player Personnel, two-time Grey Cup champion, Toronto Argonauts representing, getting ready for the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl this week, the Senior Bowl next week. How are you today, Johnny?
Doing good. How's that Ohio State pick working out?
Not too good, but my NFL picks are 4-2. You and I atop the standings. Big Law and David Turner on the bottom looking up, 2-4. So we welcome them to the big show. Let's go out there to Arizona, Phoenix, and say hello to David Turner, of course, CEO of Maverick Sports Consulting, longtime NFL scout, CFL executive, three-peat champion in the Arena League with the Rattlers. He joins us here today, bright and early out there on the West Coast.
Not even bright yet. It's not even bright yet. The sun has not risen in the west just yet. You see the lights on in the house, trying to get some kind of lighting over here by the couch so I can sit and do the show. But yeah, it is nice and dark still out here. So it's sunrise coffee time out here.
Well, you are the light we are seeking in our lives, David Turner.
Oh, well, the sweet talk like that, your wife just blushes.
I think it just tells you how much you can sling it.
And of course, Russ Lande. We've got you covered east to west and everything in between, Midwest, Chicago, Illinois, via New York City. Russ Lande, of course, a longtime scout as well with the NFL, CFL, XFL, currently Calgary Stampeders, football GM and scouting course on sports management worldwide, founder of Infectious Scouting. And the resume goes on, but we only have a 60-minute show. So how are you today, Russell?
I'm good. Got a good night's sleep because Alabama sort of ended that game early, so we didn't have to stick around and watch the third and fourth quarter. That one was pretty much done as soon as they kicked off the ball. It was ugly. I think it got a great taste of some great players, but I was able to get a good night's sleep. I was excited.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that college football national championship. Nick Saban winning his 7th. We'll also get into the NFL Combine. Is it in limbo? Is it in jeopardy? Or will it be condensed? Will it be rescheduled? Will it be reimagined? We'll talk about all those scenarios. And about the front office search, the GM vacancies, head coaching, interview requests, all of that and more. And hey, like I said, look at this panel. We've all been hitting the scouting trails combined for about 100 years. So what great perspective to get. I'm going to sit back, relax, buckle up, double chin strap kind of day. Oh, by the way, thanks for all our chat room people waking up with us on this early morning. Today's show brought to you by the Embassy Suites in Cleveland. We will get you the link out there in the chat room. Samantha, you can go into my inbox. Samantha behind the scenes, our super producer. There's a link floating around. I'll try to get it to you. But we'll be broadcasting live throughout the week in Cleveland for the NFL draft. If you want to join us, Embassy Suites, Cleveland, Rockside, I believe. And we'll have more information on that. But let's begin with the national championship. John, we'll let you kick things off here since you had the correct prediction. But a lot of takeaways here. And, oh, by the way, if you didn't tune into the NFL Draft Tailgate Show, our staff went in-depth with all the prospects on both the Alabama and Ohio State teams, not just for this year's draft class, but for future draft classes. So if you want a deeper dive into some of the more prominent names, go check out that broadcast that was on Saturday. Today, we're going to touch base on it and just kind of talk about what all transpired, and John Murphy will kick us off.
Well, I think you saw what we started talking about on Saturday and continued talking about yesterday. When you start the game, and for Ohio State to lose basically the one guy that might have been able to have a difference or a different effect on the outcome of the game. Once you were down Trey Sermon, Alabama didn't really seem to matter that who you had in the backfield. They really weren't giving that guy the attention that they were going to give Trey Sermon in all likelihood. I think that caused the problem. Once that offensive explosion started, there was almost nothing Ohio State could do about it. And I give them credit for being kind of unique in the sense of they tried some different things, right? They tried to cover some things in a different way than others did to either slow it down or keep the momentum, there in front of them. But, hey, as good of the athletes that Ohio State has at linebacker, when you try matching up some of those Alabama skill players against the Ohio State linebackers, those guys' draft grades took a hit because it was not even a contest athletically, to see that. And it happened on multiple occasions. And then I think you just saw like an offense that was not going to be denied, a club that had a chip on its shoulder, knew they were losing Sarkisian, has always played really well on whatever side of the ball they're losing players and coaches. They always play really well. And I also think that, like I said, twofold. One, Ohio State's national championship was beating Clemson. And then Alabama had heard about enough of what a 7-0 Ohio State team being in the vicinity of Alabama and said, let me send you down to the FBS level. Thank you very much. So, that's kind of, I think what you saw, is that, they're not at that level. And it now makes you wonder, after how Notre Dame and Ohio State played in their biggest moments, how do you finish ranking the top 10? Does somebody that didn't get destroyed in a bowl game deserve to be ranked higher? And now what happens with all these Alabama guys, right? Because you saw some things last night that if you're one or two of these guys, if I'm Brian Robinson, I might just stick around because you might go for 1,500 plus.
But they just brought in, I think, like 2 more 5-star.
Well, yeah, every year. But the one thing that Saban does is Saban will reward the upperclassmen first and then let a younger guy beat him out. But he will reward somebody, in those moments. And I think you saw the offensive line play. And then, even inside, right? A guy that we focused on when, watching the game 2 months ago when we were together, Fedarian Mathis, eating it up in the middle there. Again, the number of guys they have that are just the talent over and over and over. You lose John Battle in the middle of the game. Doesn't matter. Next guy in, no big plays, not a big issue. To me, we're clear far and away the best team. And with or without Mac Jones are going to be a top 5 team going into next season, even with a totally unproven quarterback. Although it wouldn't be shocking to see Alabama reach into that transfer portal, and have somebody interesting to battle with Bryce Young next offseason. But I think what you saw is the athlete quotient of Alabama versus Ohio State. There's even an extreme difference there. I
think they're on a whole nother level.
Yeah, and Clemson, I think, might be closer to Alabama, and Ohio State is above Notre Dame in total athletes, but there is a sharp curve difference to the 4 teams we saw in terms of just total athlete quotient on their roster.
Yeah, and I don't think the conversation is even about this year, because I think it now is more about historically. Like, I thought last year, the LSU offense, I thought I could argue that might be the most prolific offense I had ever seen. And then I see Alabama this year, and I'm saying, I'm not so sure. And honestly, this is an undefeated team that you gotta now ask yourself, rank in the all-time college football rankings in terms of all-time great teams. But I think what you had here was that excited a lot of draft nicks and a lot of scouts. And I think for the most part, Justin Fields' draft stock wasn't really affected based on one performance. But Russ, the way people are talking about it, it's almost like my heart in my head tells me that Mac Jones is not a first-round quarterback. I'd be surprised if he gets taken that high. But now what I'm hearing, and help me decipher what's real and mirage, what I'm hearing, based on what I'm hearing, I might be surprised if Mac Jones isn't selected in the first round.
Well, personally, I have to say I haven't sat down and charted him and evaluated this kid, so I can't speak to my giving him a first-round grade or not. I can tell you that this happens every year. There's one or two guys that generally are thought of as not first-round picks, and they end up being selected in the first round because the desperation of teams for quarterbacks. You only have to go back and look at Dwayne Haskins. This is a guy that at least half the NFL teams had as a day 3 player because they felt he wasn't ready to be an NFL guy. But the desperation for the position, when you have a guy that, in this case, Jones is a well-built, tall kid, he's got a quick release, he's got a strong arm. Those 3 things right there are going to excite teams. And if you sit down and you meet with this kid and you hear all the positives from Saban and from Sarkisian, and the kid does well in the interview process, he's got a legit chance to be a first-round pick. Whether he deserves it or not, like I said, I can't speak to it because I haven't watched the film. But those traits are going to be what makes some of the coaches fall in love with him and believe they can turn him into a quality starting quarterback. And if you think he's a quality starting quarterback, he's a first-round pick.
David, any thoughts here?
Well, what I love about Mac is that he's got 2 college degrees already. He's shown he's smart. He's shown he's a leader. He's shown he can handle adversity because, he came in for Tua and handled that whole season. This year he was going to get beat out by this freshman 5-star athlete, whatever, won that job. You're not looking at a man who hasn't faced adversity and just been given a job and done really successful. Yes, he's full or filled around him with incredible athletes, offensive line that is pro style offensive line. But here's a kid that's been shown adversity at the University of Alabama, the highest level there is, and he's been successful. So is that a first-round pick? That's a lot of the makeup. I don't think there's one personnel guy, an executive on this call right now that wouldn't say that's a lot of the makeup we look for. Now, does he have the arm talent? Does he have the scramble ability to keep plays open, to keep plays alive with his feet, eyes downfield, different things like that? A lot of those questions, as I watched the game unfold last night, is yes. So, again, you got to dive deeper into him. But, even at the Heisman Trophy, he just lost the Heisman Trophy to his buddy. He was the first one to jump out of his seat, give his guy the hug, and be like, you deserved it. Last night, he fed him 12 balls in the first half, and the guy ate 3 touchdowns up before getting hurt. The receiver, it was the most – D. Smith was the most exciting player on the field last night before he got hurt. But Mac Jones was the catalyst to a lot of the success for him by delivering them very, very receiver-friendly balls to be able to run after the catch. He doesn't have to make a lot of adjustments to catch these balls that Mac's throwing. You got to take it deeper when you're digesting this as a quarterback evaluator. So my point is, don't go and dismiss that he's had all these weapons and because he's handling adversity. He's shown that he can throw really good balls, touch balls, put heat on it. This is a kid that, will he go in the top 15? I don't know. I don't believe so. Will he go in the top round? He has a very good chance to be by 32 by being off the board.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because he's just as efficient and accurate and impressive as Joe Burrow was a year ago. And I think where it really becomes an interesting first-round conversation, we know Lawrence, we know Fields, but now you got a guy like Trey Lance, and here's a kid who started all of 13 games at the FCS level, and here's a Mac Jones who started multiple seasons on the biggest stage there is, national championship, throw after throw. I'll throw it out to our residential GM here, John Murphy. Are you buying or selling Mac Jones in round 1?
Well, considering 3 years ago as a freshman, he was trying to catch confetti with his face, after they won, right? Considering he looked like the water boy in the post-game, video that they had of him trying to catch the confetti when it was falling. Think about that scenario, right? They mentioned that video that Nick Saban or one of the coaches jokingly mentioned and showed the video of him when they won the national championship after Tua, all excited and literally acting like a kid trying to catch the confetti. And instead of letting that go, Saban used it as a tool and went to him and said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You think that guy is going to be my starting quarterback? Not a chance in hell, buddy. You know, if you want to be the starting quarterback at Alabama, you better start representing yourself that way every day. And what the program said is he took that to heart, and instead of trying to explain himself, instead of saying, Coach, I was just having fun. We won the national championship. He took it for real and started doing and mimicking everything he saw out of the guys in front of him. So when you hear those stories, now you're starting to see a little more of the guy, and you see him in a presence last night under duress. He flips the ball in perfect harmony to Najee Harris, and they get a big play out of it instead of Ohio State making a defensive play. He has started to do some things starting in the SEC championship game against Florida, and then in these last two games to kind of give you a reason to wonder, what would this look like in another year, right? Zach Wilson gave it to you early in the season, right? Carson Strong has given it to you to think about next year. Where's the progress going with this guy? And I think the one thing that both, all three of us know, in terms of in the NFL, some of the decision makers would much rather have you make the decision for them because it takes the pressure off if it doesn't work, right? Mac Jones could be somebody's Mitch Trubisky, right? Because, hey, you're not going to really get guns blazing at you for drafting Mac Jones, who went undefeated and won a national championship at Alabama. And if it fails, well, let's see. I got a quarterback coach, an offensive coordinator, and a head coach I could fire before it gets to me. So, yeah. Can I see Mac Jones going in the first round? Absolutely. Why? Because there's a lot of 32 decision makers who sit there and want someone else to help them make the decision so that when it gets hot, they're still in the buffer zone and somebody else is taking the heat.
So if I'm reading this correctly, our residential GM, John Murphy here, doing his best Fred Astaire impression with the top. What I heard correctly here is that
I didn't know Gregory Hines signed on today.
Would I take him in the first round? No. But will somebody take him in the first round? Yes. And so that's what I got out of the conversation here. And that's what we do on the State of Football. We're like one big familia. We laugh, we cry, we share stories. And then we've got a sad one as we shift gears here on the State of Football. Weekdays, 9 a.m. Eastern, your new home for real football talk in the morning. And Daniel Cassidy in the chat room saying, hey, this is the new home. This is my new show. Instead of Good Morning Football, please, we'll take all the conversions. Come over to the good side. He wants to know who Kay Adams is. I'm nominating David Turner.
Hey, I'll take it. I'm not gonna turn it down.
Hey, you're the best looking one of the bunch, so we'll give it to
I got the best beard. That's all I can do. That's all I can claim. I got the best beard. That's the only claim to fame I got on this show.
You've been working on it. So hey, let's shift gears though, where the unfortunate news, we discussed it here on the State of Football, and Sports Illustrated was the first to have it. The NFL Combine is in jeopardy. And so what we do know is this: due to March Madness being the entire tournament being held in Indianapolis, and due to the NFL, envisioning a combine in Indianapolis that what traditionally would take 1 week now would require 2 weeks due to the COVID pandemic, it's just not feasible. They can't do it at the normal time, which is generally the end of last week of February into the first week of March. It's just, kind of overlapping with this March Madness deal. So, our good friend Eric Edholm over at Yahoo had a great update saying, he's got his ear to the grindstone that either the combine will be 1, canceled, 2, consolidated, or 3, reimagined. which could include a scenario of regional combines. I'll go over to Russ Lande. What is the residual effect? What does a combine look like if we even have one at all? And what are the ramifications if this thing goes out in April? Do the NFL really want to figure out a new host city in such a short amount of time? Try to make sense of this for us, Russell.
Well, I think, the NFL is realistic. They're looking at every possibility if they have to move it to April of finding a new location. Because, everybody I spoke to last year, the two biggest things that came up in terms of having to adjust your draft board because of the pandemic were A, not having full physicals because teams removed players from their draft board that they didn't have signed off on medicals, and non-verified measurables, which is a much bigger issue this year because there was no preseason Balesto or national numbers for the majority of the country. At least last year, you had height, a rough weight, hand, arm, and wingspan, along with a Wonderlic on 80 to 90% of your guys that were on the board initially. This year, you have none of that, or maybe you have it on 10% of the kids. So teams want to at least get height, weight, measurables on everybody, and the medical is even more important. I think they will find a way to do something, whether it's using each facility of the 32 teams to get in a certain number of players to get them measured and have them do an interview that's recorded, that's shared with everybody, or finding one location, which I think is going to be much harder to do just because of all the logistics of that many people being there. I did get told that if they do hold an actual combine in one city, you will see many less people in attendance. They will probably not do anywhere near the amount of drills. It will strictly be measure them, time in a 40, do a vertical short shuttle, and let's get them out of here. We're not going to have all the positional drills. We're not going to have all the interview stuff going on there. It's just to get the medicals and to get the bottom line base measurables. So I think they're doing everything they can to find a way to do it. How they're going to pull it off, I'm not sure. But trust me, if they could pull off the season without missing a game while every other league had to either cancel their season or rejigger everything, they're going to find a way to get something done. They have unlimited funds, so that gives them a huge advantage. They'll figure something out to at least get medicals and measurables on every kid that's going to be on a draft board.
Well, I would say this, Russ, if that's the case, why wouldn't the NFL just send the criteria for the physicals out to the universities and literally pay the university doctors to do the physicals for the players, so that way they get done to NFL standards, but yet you're not having to travel anybody, put anybody at risk, or do anything outside the norm, and it's also helping the school out because obviously these schools have all just lost a ton of money, so at least they could make some money on this where the schools get paid by the NFL to do this physicals, go through the checklist, enter all the MRI exams. All these universities have
they may well do
skills.
that.
I'm just saying that's one option.
I'm just saying, be in discussions to do that. My concern is I wonder if some of the schools are not willing to because
they're getting paid to.
No, but they may not have the option. Some of the states may not present that as an option. The schools where the kids are off campus, yes, they did it in Alabama's not going to have an issue, but a lot of the Big Ten schools, they canceled the season before it got put back in place. They may say, hey, we don't want to bring kids back on campus just for this, because a lot of the schools in the Midwest are still remote, like Michigan State.
No, I get that, but this doesn't require going on campus. It goes to the doctor's office. Anybody can go to the doctor's office. You go to ortho. If you're the kid, you can go to the ortho and get a check and get done. Then you can go to the gen med guy's office and get checked and get done.
No doubt, but
it doesn't have to be done centralized. The kid, we have enough time between now and the draft where these kids can go to the separate doctor's offices, go get their own. I just had ankle surgery and I had to go to several and still have to go to several doctor's offices to get it done and get That's all I'm saying is they can figure this out.
I have no doubt, but I don't think it's going to be simple is what I'm saying. There's no doubt they will. Like I said, they're the only sport.
I'm not sure that all the schools have that resource to do that, though, do they?
If the league is paying for it, though, they may not even have to go through the school.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The school has every single school to play football has a doctor, has a team doctor, and that group that each university has a gen med guy, has an ortho, has typically a foot doctor in case something happens with orthopedics. They have trade out deals. They have different things going on here, Rick. So therefore, every single school that plays football has these things in place. That infrastructure.
Many of them are furloughed right now, though, at the moment, right?
Well, no, the team doctors don't work usually for the team. Like the University of Utah has a team doctor, but he's usually a doctor
outsourced to.
He has a practice.
Yeah,
of his own,
he has a practice on his own
to get his name publicity.
And
that seems like a lot of work for 350 players.
Well, again, you're divide. This is what I devised, and I sent to the league with ANC, and you know this, is that we would do these smaller regional combines because what you would get is about 25 to 50 players per region to come in, and then that would put less stress on whatever doctor was in those regions and the hospital in that region to only have to do physicals on, say, 25 to 50 kids versus 350 in one spot. If you're asking, they're like, okay, you've submitted your name for the NFL draft, okay? You would have been invited. You would have been invited to the NFL Combine if we had one. Here's the paperwork, kid. It's now on you to get this paperwork filled out by your team doctors, and here's the checklist. If you don't do that, you're not eligible to be drafted by the NFL this year. Again, it's a lot to ask a young man. It's a lot to ask these doctors. It's a lot to ask of people. But with the likelihood of us not having a centralized combine, then what is the other options? A is to do what we've proposed, which is smaller combines in different places, smaller pro days, or even consolidated pro days for like the SEC, have a consolidated pro day happening in one location, so you don't have NFL scouts traveling on and off campuses each and every day to get to all the pro days. You put like SEC in Atlanta at the Falcons facility or at their big dome where people can be spread out around and you can still watch it and do the pro day stuff. In this way, you don't have to have scouts traveling as much and all over, because that's going to be a concern with the NFL putting their employees in jeopardy, asking them to cover all these different places. When last fall, the decision was made, they took them right off the road. And even this fall, you couldn't have normal tryouts at facilities. Your scouts weren't allowed to go to tryouts off site until later in the year when COVID numbers fell down a little bit, but now they're spiking. All these things are coming into play. So that's what I'm saying, that you might have to put the responsibility for these physicals more on the universities and the kids in order to get it done and make sure they're eligible for that. Now, how do you get the measurables? It might be hiring guys like Murphy, Lande, myself that aren't NFL employees, so we can go out and do the measurables, and they have credible people doing the measurables to get those done for them, timing those 40s for them or something of that nature.
Well, I think the major news flash is, like, at the end of the day, Park Avenue doesn't really care, if they get no measurables. They're not going to feel sorry for the teams. And I don't think the universities want any part of this. And then I think the other part of it is, it is definitely better than nothing. But I think when you have 350 different medical checkups and height, measurements being conducted by, 200 different people, it kind of loses its value, because the NFL loves consistency, right? They love having all those medical reports done by the same facility in Indianapolis. They like having everybody measured at one site because there's consistency and accuracy. So, I agree. I think it's a better alternative than having nothing. I just don't think that the NFL, in terms of Park Avenue, they could care less if there's no combine. They're not going to really care. And I don't think the universities really care. Like, once a player leaves their program, unfortunately, the sad reality is they're not really there to help, next step of his pro career.
Well, I also disagree with you that Park Avenue doesn't care if there's a combine, because they make a lot of money on that broadcast and that path to the draft. That's content in which they play over and over, and they get a lot of advertising. So they do care on that. Second, if you do regional combines, you can have a greater path to the draft, which was our pitch to them, was like, you can make each one of these events, something you send a camera crew out to, and there is a greater path to the draft, and they're smaller. So therefore, you can get more kids actually compacted in these things, and you can include more people. And the 400 number becomes not only achievable, you could probably get 800 kids weighed, measured, and worked out if you consolidate these these things into regional combines where you have like 8 of them across the country, because at 8, you do 100 kids per combine. That's 800 kids that are getting weighed, measured, medicaled, and you can do 2 per week. And you can have some execs at each, and some people overseeing it. It was a whole comprehensive 50-page document we sent the NFL about how to do it, how to pull it off. And if they chose to do it, again, we're available and we'll take care of it for you, NFL. But, that would get you 800 kids measurable. That would get you 800 kids tested. And again, ANC, we went through the entire spring and fall doing combines where we did over 1,000 kids that came through our doors. Not one report of COVID, not from a kid, a player, any of our staff, and myself included. I got tested 4 times during the process, not one lick of COVID, and I live in Arizona. So there's ways to get it done and not have COVID, but I think it's with smaller groups, and you can still get all the drills in. You can still do everything. It's just a matter of having smaller, more condensed places and open air. Open air is the key. So you got to find the weather, because if you do it inside facilities, we had to do that once in Baltimore for ANC. And, I don't know how comfortable everybody was, but you had to wear a lot more masks that day than open air everywhere else.
And so, so that creates somewhat of an issue in the Northeast. Now, I will say this. If they do expand it, I think 500 is the number that they would like to expand it to. But I would like to see regional combines. I think there's a need for it. However, I will say the NFL, I'll go back, I believe firmly, the NFL could care less if these kids get tested. They really don't. And from a content side, they'll do it all virtually. They'll do everything virtually, and they can send a camera team or whatever. So, they'll figure that out. I think that, at the end of the day, it might be a blessing in disguise if there is no testing and you do get the measurables and the medical. And I'll go over to John because we haven't heard from him yet. But to me, I think your scouting department will actually, if you trust your scouting analysis or your staff, I think you could actually be more accurate in setting your board without the testing. I'll go over to John Murphy.
Yeah, I think the medical thing is going to be, what kind of rules the day here. Do they think that at some point, even if it's after the NCAA basketball, that if all you were doing was sending the players to Indianapolis to do medical, maybe hypothetically you test them at home and then you medical them, in one place in one, kind of baseline. So everybody's medical came from the same people. Then you're just bringing them in groups in April, and the medical is your last checkpoint. The NFL teams wouldn't love that. It's different. But if you were getting a final medical 2 weeks before the draft, that's still enough time to digest, that information, especially if it was just done, by one group, and then there's nothing else happening in Indianapolis beside that. There's no other interaction or anything. That means you could do all the interviews throughout the offseason process, and you could either use the 32 NFL facilities, college facilities, or something in between to do the workout portion of it. So you got 32 facilities to use. That's a possibility for how do you do 500 plus workouts, is regionally they work out, for their regional team. If you're at the school, that's where you're doing it. If you're at home, that's your club type thing. Or, you're just having to create a regional opportunity for it. But I think the medical part is what they're going to try to find a baseline for. And I think the 2 most likely scenarios for that is either everybody's still going to Indianapolis before or after, because then they're just going right to the hospital. They're not going downtown. They're not going near the dome. They're not going near the basketball stuff. You can keep them all at the hotel, airport hotel, bring them in groups at a time, and then you don't have any more than 50 to 70 kids, at any one point in time. They're not interacting with anybody involved in the NFL. You're not bringing people from 32 different cities all over the place. And then you say, hey, the workouts are going to be either conducted at the universities or on your, they open that window, right? Because right now you can only work out guys, within 60 miles, I believe, of your facility at a local pro day. So you change those or alter those rules, and try to get as many of these kids under a clock as you can, and then take your best information, right? I got some people telling me they're back watching 2018 and 2019 and then what they got this year. Is there a discernible difference on a kid? Is there, a metric to say, did they play better or worse under these conditions? What was the other, what are the other things that happened? Right. And you see last night, Devonta Smith probably has something with his finger. Wyatt Davis, unfortunately, looks like he may have damaged his knee, to some extent. Trey Sermon may have broken a collarbone. All right, now these are all guys that would get an original or an initial medical next month and then a follow-up in April. Your initial medical might be whatever the university tells you happened, and the follow-up is really going to be more like the final. And I could see something like that going on, with them. But I do believe that when you've gotten people so accustomed to able to play games, able to see them get through all this, they're going to want the drills, right? They're going to want something mechanical with these players to get people excited about them, about the draft, about the process. You got to believe they're going to try to fundamentally get as many of these guys on the field in some way, shape, or form, but with the NFL controlling it, which is the kind of the ebb and flow or catch-22 of it, which is they want to get it done, but they also want to have control over it. And that'll be the interesting part to say, how much outreach will they be willing to do? Or will it just be kind of an unofficial thing like last year where, hey, down the stretch, if you called the team and said, hey, you're not there today, but I am, well, they weren't turning down the results. Let's just leave it to you like that, right? So, we know that, teams will take any or every opportunity to get as much information, to find out what other people aren't finding out. And to me, like I said, the most not interesting, but, the part of it that would be devoid again is if you don't have these college bowl games normally done and people are socially distanced at practice and you're not on the field during the one-on-ones and you're not in the stands kind of huddled together, and then you don't have a combine that way and you don't have the pro days that way, all of that draft talk, all of that water cooler talk gets shut off. And then to me, that's what hurts the backup player that's going to run a 4.4, the smaller school guys, the opportunity that somebody says, do I need to go see that guy? Like, how much emphasis do I need to put on certain things? That's what's going to make it interesting, because now the variables on grades could really be a lot wider amongst the 32 teams than probably normal.
Yeah, and I do think the small school kids are left out to dry here. Now, one last thing, I'll go over to Russ Lande for the final word here. In Eric Edholm's report over at Yahoo, there was optimism that there would be pro days. So kind of a reverse, if the second wave of COVID doesn't flare up, kind of reverse of last year, that there could be no combine, but there could be pro days. In that case, I would hope that teams would open up the doors to some of those smaller schools and schools within the area. So that could be one scenario. But Russ, we'll let you wrap up the whole thought process on the combine, pro days, and what this draft season outlook could look like.
Well, firstly, I think it would be great if they could pull that off. I'm not sure they can, but if they can pull off pro days, it would be great for the kids. And I would think the NFL would put pressure on those schools that have historically not allowed smaller school kids to come to their pro days, that have been a little bit of a hard ass. They may put a little pressure on them saying, hey, for this 1 year, will you let them in? I think every team or every league executive would love to see all the schools act like Northwestern. Northwestern brings in every kid pretty much that's from Chicago or went to school within Illinois. They're allowed to come to Northwestern in the morning. They get measured, timed, put through a small workout on the field. So all those numbers are at least there. And that's how Garoppolo really made a name for himself. He went there during the pro day for small school guys, did well enough that they invited him to stay for the afternoon when the Northwestern guys worked out, and that really got him sort of more attention than I think he was going to get. So I would think the NFL is going to rely on that. Most of these big schools have worked out a protocol, so they've been able to stay pretty safe during the season. So if the NFL can convince them all to let the smaller school kids, 10 or 15 per school, to be a part of their pro day, that would allow almost every kid to at least get measured around the country.
Oh, great. This is the state of football here. Weekdays, 9 a.m. Eastern time, your new home for real football talk in the mornings. We're here at the Jersey Shore. The sun is rising. Our fans are rising. Thanks to all the chat room peeps joining us here, DC, and the place to be. Always good to see you. Big Law, Lawrence Johnson, who will join us on the Football Friday edition every Friday. Tomorrow, we'll have the legendary Coach Keith Grabowski. Thursday, Dane Vandernat from the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl will join us, and the NFLPA virtual event is taking place tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, so we'll get the lowdown with Dane. Of course, Neil Stratton from Inside the League, 9:40 every Thursday, 9:40 a.m. Eastern with the latest front office rumblings, and that brings us into our final segment of the show. Russ Lande mentioned Northwestern. Tommy Goodhines, good to see you, brother, over there at the Hub football camp. Pat Fitzgerald has refused interview requests from NFL teams, and there's been a lot of them. There's been a lot of moving and shaking on the front office levels. Doug Peterson, the latest to receive a pink slip. He is now out in Philly. Howie Roseman remains. John Dorsey continues to lurk. Nobody has their finger on the pulse better than David Turner, who is having conversations about these candidates. So, David, what are you hearing, and what can you tell us?
Well, what I'm hearing, what's interesting is that George Paton has now gotten his second interview, and he's flying into Denver for that opportunity there. I really thought George was going to be a lock for the Lions job when I saw Chris Spielman get hired there, as Chris is the brother of Rick, where he's been working under Rick for like 22 years now. So I thought that would be a no-brainer, that he would be just on and it would weaken a divisional opponent. He'd be going right to Denver, or right to Detroit. But now word that him and I think it's Terry Fontenot are getting in person, or getting second interviews. Terry's can't be in person because of the new rule where the Saints are still in the playoffs, so playoff people cannot go and do in-person interviews. They have to do virtual. George, since he's at the Vikings, is getting the in-person interview, which again I think is something the NFL fumbled on. I get why they're allowing it with the people out of the playoffs, but that puts the people in the playoffs in a precarious position that they can't go do in-person interviews. So, watch for a decision. It looks like that's going to get fast-tracked here sometime soon in Denver. When you're looking at head coaches' opportunities, you're looking over at the Jets. The Jets put in an in-person interview now for the DC of the Niners, so he'll be flying out there, from what I understand, to meet with Joe Douglas and the crew. So it's interesting. When I see the Peterson get open, the Falcon, or no, sorry, the Eagles job get open, I start thinking Wink Martindale. I see Wink Martindale as a really good candidate for them there, what he's showing he can do with defense, and that's one of the struggles that they have. Now, Lincoln Riley is probably the odds-on favorite to get the Eagles job because he's seen as an innovative young coach, and that's typically what they like to go with there in Philly, is an offensive-minded head coach. So we'll see what happens there, but I think Wink would really fit well with that what's going on there. And again, we hear that John Dorsey's involved at some level in the organization. Will he be the GM? Will Howie move up? Who knows? But if Dorsey's there, the personality between him and Wink would mesh really well. And I think that would be a good pairing of GM or consultant, whatever, and a head coach with that, if that were to move on. So that's what I'm hearing so far. But we'll see what happens at this point.
And as you're talking, I just saw news come down the wire. Philadelphia has reached out and now officially received permission to contact Lincoln Riley. So maybe the wheel's in motion. Also, officially signed, sealed, and delivered is Mr. Dan Quinn. He will now take over as defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. We go over to John Murphy for his insider insights into the front office and head coach openings.
Well, I mean, you know, the one person who's got to be wondering what they got themselves into in the past week is Omar Khan. How do you finish as the top-rated guy on the Texan search list? Somebody starts negotiating with you only to get a phone call from the owner who says, hold on a sec, there might be something else we're going to do. Then to fly back home and watch the first 10 minutes of your team's playoff game and see what happened, and then get scheduled and go do an interview with the Carolina Panthers. So welcome to being a front office executive or coach in professional sports who has an opportunity to interview for other jobs. Maybe sometimes not all it's made up to be, you know, to think that that's kind of been your past 7 days, you know, with your life, and then off the table and you're right back into it and you're interviewing with a totally different team. You know, that's just crazy, you know, to examine that. I think the other part is the stuff behind the scenes with the interviews that Eric Bieniemy has done, you know, and he said, she said, you know, that's come out of it. You know, the Texans, you know, now people are wondering if people around Houston kind of leaked that out to try to explain themselves why they didn't interview him, why he wasn't on their list. You know, was somebody related to the Texans, the one that kind of leaked that story out? That's not a good look. You know, if it's true or false, neither way is it a good look, and also makes it tough on the Falcons as an organization, because you're not going to come out and say, no, he did a great job, and then not hire him. And you're also not going to come out and say, holy crap, yeah, he was terrible, and then not hire him, right? So now you're stuck with that being your situation. And now here's the Eagles, right, with the former connection to Andy Reid, and you have a guy like Bieniemy, an offensive-minded guy available. When you have Jalen Hurts and Wentz, are the Eagles going to look at that as saying, well, it's the credibility's already been damaged by somebody reporting that he didn't do well in an interview? You know, so could it be as unimaginable as it started? Lincoln Riley, maybe with the Eagles. Doug Peterson now, maybe with the Jets. You know, it seems like the Jaguars, maybe the Chargers kind of have their guys. Is Eric Bieniemy going to finish this time around? Maybe with a second Super Bowl ring, but it's not looking like he's getting a head coaching job.
Yeah, and then you also, you know, you're giving the Chiefs additional draft picks, and if they win the Super Bowl, who the heck wants to do that? Big shout out to our guy, Preacher Boy Roy Countryman, who will be on our show here soon. We got a lot of exciting announcements coming. One of them involves Roy, but I'll go over to you, Russ. Do you see Joe Douglas showing interest in his old buddy Doug Peterson? And I'll throw this one at you too. I thought it was a joke, but I kept seeing people recycle the news. Adam Gase, is he a candidate in Philadelphia? I mean, I couldn't stop laughing. Any thoughts there, Russ?
I'd be stunned if Adam Gase is a legitimate candidate there, just because if you look at some of the people that either have worked or currently work at the Eagles, there's not a strong feeling that Adam is the guy you want in charge. I think the Eagles are in a tough situation because let's remember, Bieniemy, while everybody wants to say he'd be a great fit and he has a history, Andy didn't walk away from the Eagles' job. Andy was fired. And there may be some reasons for that are still in the building in terms of there may not be great feelings. He may be advising Bieniemy, that's not the place you want to go. Wait for a better opportunity. We don't know that. I'm just saying that's a possibility there too. Also, let's remember, Lincoln Riley, if they're going to get him to come to Philly, two big things. One, John Dorsey and him, or whoever is going to be in charge of personnel, would have to have a great relationship. Secondly, if you think he's coming there and going to have a GM pick his players for him and run the scouting department, you're crazy. There's no way he's going to come into the NFL and get $10 million a year if he doesn't have full and complete authority over everything going on in football. So that means that Howie and John would have to take a backseat to Lincoln. I don't know how that would work. I'm not saying it's not possible because I've heard Lincoln's a good guy and it wouldn't be a bad working situation. But I'm just saying Howie and John would have to feel comfortable not being the primary people there. So I'm not sure that is a realistic thing that's going to happen. I don't know if the Chargers or any of these other teams that are not really getting much public news really have a guy chosen. I think they're sort of slow playing at some of these teams because I think teams like Jacksonville are trying to figure out if they're going to get Urban Meyer and what that's going to do to the domino effect to the rest of the candidates out there.
Well, one GM position that has been filled is Nick Caserio there for the Houston Texans, and he's already got his work cut out for himself. David, I know you and I have gone back and forth about the whole Deshaun Watson dilemma, but where do you think Caserio goes for his head coach? What kind of vision is he bringing to the table? And any other thoughts on front office openings as we wind down?
Sure. I'll take the Texans on first, and then we'll get over to a few things that Russ was saying. But first, the Texans is a debacle as an organization right now. It's an absolute, it's just like what they've said. The culture there it's becoming the new Jaguars, where nobody wants to go there, nobody wants to be part of them because the culture and it is not a good culture. So Caserio as a GM has to step in and change that. He has to do his best to sit down and talk to Deshaun. I'm surprised, part of your job as a GM, as John would know, and others that have sat in the seat, though, but part of the job is to control the narrative that's coming out of your building. So when, people are talking about your building, it's in a positive, favorable light. And right now, every word that's coming out of the Texans, even like if John was saying, Eric had a bad interview in Atlanta, to come out and say, well, he had a bad interview at Atlanta, so that's why we didn't bring him in. It's like, do your due diligence and bring a guy in, find out for yourself if it was that environment, that interview environment in Atlanta wasn't good, and therefore it's not, wasn't attractive to Eric. He just went and did it to kind of get the experience, or what? Don't just, this isn't high school. This is big time football. This is a big time business. Do your own homework. So, and so if that were to be true, it come out of that building, it just shows you to the level of debacle it's really falling. And if you're Nick Caserio, how do you not have dinner with your quarterback already? He's unhappy, he's upset. Bring him in, talk to him, give him a voice. I don't like these ego men that come in and be like, this is going to be my way, they will conform to me. Man, let them have a voice. Listen to them. Sit them down and say, hey, let's have a meal together. What do Italians do? We have a sit down. You have a meal together, right? You drink a little vino and you get it worked out. It's a sit down. So you have a sit down with your quarterback. This is your franchise quarterback. You got a lot of money invested. You need him bought into the process. This isn't a practice squad player that you can cut, bait. No one knows his name. No one's ever going to hear from him again. This is your guy. So you sit him down. You give him a conversation. You let him have errors, differences, whatever he wants. Try to work in a little bit of what he's suggesting to the process. What's that going to hurt you? Is it going to cost you a day, an hour of your time? I mean, come on. Like, this is your guy. You got to make time for him. So, I don't get that. And I really think there are coaching candidates that have taken their names out of the hat from Houston. Now, one guy will take the job. Don't get me wrong, because it's one of 32 in the world. But I know candidates that are taking their name out of the hat down in Houston because of what's going on in that culture, and they don't trust that they're going to be able to walk in and be successful, and they don't want that stain on their resume. So they're going, let somebody else take that one. Even with Deshaun being there, let somebody else take that one, and I'm just going to move on to somewhere else. So, who are they going to ultimately end up with? I do not know. I have no idea, but I do feel that it's not going to be the best candidate that maybe other teams will land with. Now, you talk about Lincoln Riley going to the Eagles. I don't know. From what I know of Lincoln, his ego isn't that big. I think he likes control, but I don't have a lot of reports coming out of there that he's got this huge ego. So if a John Dorsey were to be in the building and he was comfortable with him, I think Lincoln would take the job and say, hey, listen, John's been doing this. He's basically built the Chiefs. He's built Cleveland. I'm going to listen to John Dorsey and how he wants to build this team a little bit. And Lincoln's never dealt with a salary cap, doesn't know how to handle and adjust that. And I think there are some infrastructure at the Eagles that can take some of those negotiations of contracts and things off his plate and allow him to be comfortable just coaching on the field. So, that could be attractive to him. Another one that's getting interesting is Urban Meyer going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but the Jaguars keep interviewing other people. Well, here's the thing, guys. I don't really think Urban Meyer wants a pro job because he can't lie, cheat, and steal to win. So therefore, why would he can't be successful in the pros? So, you can do that in college football and then say you got health issues and bail out and let the organization deal with the consequences. Versus the NFL, you can't do that. So I really don't. I think it's all smoke and mirrors with Urban. At the last minute, it's going to be somebody else. So, who that is, I don't know yet. Second to last point, I do feel that Brian Daboll will wind up down there as the San Diego head coach. So they're waiting for the Bills to finish up their season or at some point end the season. They can name Brian as their next head coach because that's going to be the spot he lands. And lastly, if Adam Gase gets a third head coaching job, okay, before people like Anthony Lynn, Raheem Morris get their second opportunity. Jerry Reese gets his second opportunity. Ray Farmer gets his second opportunity. Before you see coaches that have gone, Leslie Frazier, who's up there doing a great job at the Bills defensive coordinator, get Todd Bowles, who's doing a great job. If they don't get their second opportunity before Gase gets his third opportunity, that's a travesty to the hiring cycle in the NFL, and that's ridiculous. That is absolutely embarrassing if that were to happen because there is no rhyme or reason. This guy has not won or done a dang thing on his own to prove that he should get a third opportunity. He's gotten his two, but let's let some other people eat here, guys, that have done well. Not only with their first, they've done okay. Maybe they fail. Okay, great. People learn from it, but then they've rebounded. They've gone back to being a DC. They've gone back to being an assistant general manager, whatever. And they don't get like Martin Mayhew sitting in San Francisco, and he doesn't get a second opportunity as a GM job. This is ridiculous, folks. Put the spotlight where it belongs. If this guy winds up getting a third opportunity, put the spotlight where it belongs. I'm down. That's good.
We appreciate it. David Turner there with the 411. And rumor has it, if you stare directly into Adam Gase's eyes.
His eyes are constantly wandering. We don't know where it's going to be.
It's hard to say, though.
His eyes clearly not on the ball. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we've had another hour of power here. A couple of quick transactions. We saw yesterday the news. Jared Bellier. This is the state of coronavirus 2021. He goes from suiting up for the Packers in the playoffs 1 week to now suiting up for the Packers this week. And now you saw Zach Moss, we talked about on yesterday's show with Ralph Ventry, NFL Around the League show yesterday. You can go back and watch that. Zach Moss out with the Buffalo Bills. The Bills now signing Devontae Freeman, who was cut last week by the New York Giants. So trying to get a little extra tread out of those tires there on Devontae Freeman as the Bills make their playoff run. We'll talk more about front office rumblings tomorrow. We'll try to dive into some of our all-decade teams. Of course, legendary coach Keith Grabowski will join us. Thursday, Dane Vandernat, NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, Neil Stratton from Inside the League, and then Friday, a Football Friday affair with Big Law. Hopefully we have David Turner because I'm loving beating down Big Law and Turner in the football playoff pick'em standings. John Murphy and myself 4-2. David Turner.
He came out fast in the regular season and he tailed off at the end, didn't he, John? So, I'm pretty sure his stamina is going to fall off here pretty soon.
We're talking playoffs?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Change the narrative. Just saying, I was just talking about your stamina. That's all. Sam should know. Hey, Sam, sign on. Let's talk about his stamina real quick.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. All right.
He wears me out.
Our super producer, Samantha, behind the scenes.
It's all love. It's all family here.
I've had 2 pots of coffee. I'm ready to go for another hour. Buckle up. But it's time for parting shots. And we're always fortunate enough to have David Turner join us here on the State of Football. Of course, Friday Night Scout School, Mav Sports Take podcast, I believe, tonight David Turner, enlighten us with your parting shot here for today. What do you got cooking there at Maverick Sports Consulting?
Yeah, Maverick Sports Consultant. We're cooking and booking the books over here. It's our busy time of the year, getting everybody ready for their draft process, getting everybody ready to go through these virtual interviews and what's ahead of them. So if you're an agent, if you're a player, if you're looking to be part of this, please come to Maverick Sports Consulting, sign up for one of our packages so we can help you get through this process and all the adversity you're about to face and make sure you can maximize what's coming your way. Parting shots is everybody stay healthy. Again, out here in Arizona, we are going through another huge spike of corona, and it's not a joke. I have a former intern who his father, his mother, and brother all have corona right now. His father just came out of the hospital and it looks like he's going into the hospital because it's been hitting them so bad. So the whole family is being hit very hard with it, and it's very real. Wear your mask, save lives, help everybody wash your hands, and don't think it's a joke. It's real. So stay healthy and safe out there, everybody.
Yep, stay safe, be smart, and we will hope for the best here that we can kind of contain this thing as we navigate through the draft process. We've got our priorities in order. We need a combine. We need pro days. We need to make it happen. So be smart, stay safe out there. Of course, Russ Lande from Infectious Scouting, of course, football GM and scouting seminar on sportsmanagementworldwide.com, I believe, is starting up again. And, of course, the Calgary Stampeders. He joins us here each and every Tuesday to provide insight and analysis, and we thank him so much. Russell Lande, what is your parting shot for the people today?
Well, it's real easy. I mean, doing this, there's never more fun than getting on here with you guys. But the most important thing, we're talking NFL and GMs and head coach. Hey, puck drops tomorrow night. NHL season starts Wednesday. Rangers start Thursday. That's all I'm worried about. Alexis Lafreniere from Quebec, number 1 pick in the draft, coming to bring my Rangers to the promised land. That's what I'm talking about this week. That's my parting shot.
Russell Lande, always providing me with the NHL updates that I need in my life.
Because I know you wouldn't know a puck from a basketball. So.
Well, I am definitely inside the bubble here as we hit January 12th. 107 days, by the way, until the 2020.
Until your retirement?
I wish. You said the Mega Millions is on fire tonight. I'm going to get my ticket.
Oh, sorry, boys. I already bought the winners. So you can stay home. I already got them. They're in the bag. Don't worry about it.
That was why Dave was talking about you can't cheat and all that stuff if you're in the pros. I mean, he's just going to go and cheat, win that thing, and walk away.
I'm out.
I hope one of us have a shot here to do it, but we're 107 days away from the 2021 NFL Draft. Join us out at the Embassy Suites in Cleveland, Rockside. We'll get you the email link. We put it out on the Twitterverse there today. We'll be broadcasting live throughout the week in Cleveland for the 2021 NFL Draft on location. Of course, our Senior Bowl coverage. We'll have about a half a dozen staff down in Mobile, Alabama this year for the 2021 Reese's Senior Bowl. We'll be bringing you exclusive access, one-on-one interviews, practice reports. Stay tuned there for the NFL.com. One of those gentlemen who might be in attendance, I don't want to get him in trouble, is John Murphy, our residential GM, of course, Toronto Argonauts, and my daily co-host here on the State of Football, your new home for Real Football Talk in the mornings. John, what do you got for us?
Yeah, either way, I could just be driving through. I mean, I just happen to be down there, and if there's a football related going on, that's just there's nothing to see here. Just keep moving on. But I think that one of the things, and David mentioned it when he kind of went through his list of guys, there are a lot of great members of Alabama staff, but keep an eye on Holloman Wiggins, their wide receiver coach, came there from Virginia Tech, done a great job with the receivers. When he was at Memphis and Virginia Tech, now at Alabama, would not be surprising one day, much like Adam Henry, to see him coach enough of these college stars that an NFL team decides to give him a crack. But another guy on a great staff that one day soon, maybe you see as an OC somewhere, or you see come up the ranks. You'll remember, that he coached Devonta Smith. You'll remember he coached John Mechie, and Jalen Waddle, and has had a lot of really good success, worked with a lot of good players. A lot of times your assistant coaches don't get a lot of love after a national championship because they put in all that work and they don't have any time to really put themselves out there, for jobs. So there's one guy that's doing a bang-up job, young coach, come up the ranks the right way, worked his way from Memphis to Virginia Tech, and now at Alabama. And don't forget, it also means if you're an analyst on Alabama, that's a pretty damn good job to have. So, there's a lot of guys that have bumped up the food chain. And amazingly, Nick Saban, 7th national championship. But even more important than that, he even found a way to get Butch Jones a national championship ring in the SEC. Not something you could have predicted. Butch Jones still got a national championship ring in the, coaching in an SEC program. Kind of thought that was funny. And if you want to know how bad Jeff Fisher wants back in, go read his quote yesterday when he completely throws Jeremy Pruitt under the bus and says, hey, you know who would be a good coach for Tennessee? Well, I would if you didn't have one already. So Jeff Fisher, shout out for putting Jeremy Pruitt under the bus and riding back and forth over top of him. So, you're going to see a lot of that this time of year, and we'll be interested to tomorrow. I'll be excited to see who Coach Grabowski. Did you get Nick Saban to do something? Maybe Coach Grabowski. Is that what you're going to tell us tomorrow? Maybe. But I doubt we're gonna have the Bo Pelini cover none. I don't think he's going to be one of the guest coaches talking about how not to cover wide receivers and leave backs open in empty sets this year. So probably not getting Bo Pelini as a guest coach this year. But I'll be really interested to see what Coach Grabowski has, because it's such a great program and a great charity, and we're only a week away. So we're interested to see what rabbit does he pull out of his hat tomorrow. I got a feeling he might have one or two big ones left.
Yeah, Lauren's first and goal, of course, a big one there for coachingcoordinator.com. We'll have Coach Grabowski tomorrow. I thought you were going to say Jeff Fisher wants back into the NFL ranks, because he's looking at Washington saying, hey, if they can make the playoffs at 7-9, I'm golden. 8-8, let's go. Hey. But this concludes another hour of Power. My parting shot here, we never know who's listening, when they're listening, where they're listening, why they're listening. Hopefully it's to get educated. And I know a lot of NFL decision makers that we interact with do tune into the show, and we hear from a lot of front office people, and we appreciate all the love and support. And I'm here to tell you that I've got nothing but love and support for this panel here. And I think because there's only 32 NFL GM jobs, just like every other industry, it's not really what you know, it's who you know. We all know that. But I want to shine the spotlight on these three candidates, because if I was an NFL owner, and maybe if I win this Powerball tonight,
even then, you won't have enough money for an NFL team.
Yeah, great. Great, yeah, because I'm sure that 1% ownership after tonight will really get us in the door.
But, I don't understand why teams aren't calling these three men. Seriously. Nobody's more connected. Nobody's more knowledgeable. And if you want to talk about experience, these guys have done it at every level, at every step of the way. Not only that, they bring experience, they bring leadership. And I'm going to be honest with you. I talk to a lot of the NFL teams. I share some of our information. What we're doing at the NFL Draft Bible, the resources, and it's a collection of resources, right? It's more in depth. It's more elaborate than the NFL teams have, a lot of them. And I can say that with confidence because they tell me this. So that's just, one little small part that I know is that these guys, not only do they have access to better information, they're providing legit information, and they've been doing it for decades. So why not take a look at John Murphy, a two-time Grey Cup champion, right? Why not? Who's working?
Hold on, Chad Kahn, just calling right now. Hold on a second.
Oh, wait, I'm going to make myself an agent right now. You need to get a hold of David Turner or Russell Lande. Hit me up. I'll put you in contact with them. RIC at NFLDraftBible.com. We've got champions. We've got winners. We got pedigree. Take a look around. Nobody, if you tune into this show on a regular basis, then you will know. Nobody knows more than these guys. Bring them on in. Russell Lande, he's worked for legends upon legends. David Turner, again, this guy's experienced how many different organizations at the NFL level? A 3-time champion at the Arena League, that's a whole nother level of scouting. Okay? So, and I'll tell you this. You win with day 3 draft picks, undrafted free agents and finding those diamond street free agents throughout the season, that's how you win. That's how you win. If you want to tell me otherwise, I refuse to believe you. You win on day 3 picks, undrafted free agents, and street free agents. And nobody scouts those 3 areas better than these 3 men. So wake up, NFL. Wake up, 32 owners. Call them or call me. And we'll put you in touch with them. But that's my parting shot for today. We'll see you tomorrow bright and early, 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow on the State of Football, your new home